What's up, AKAPADers? Welcome to another episode of Wildstorm Wednesday. Right here, right now, we're going to talk Jim Lee. Who can follow Jim Lee? And namely, who follows Jim Lee in Fantastic Four? You know, Heroes Reborn, the greatest comic book reboot of all time. Let's go! AKAPADers, Peter A. DeLuca, aka Pad69, is here with me, known through Philadelphia, Europe, and the vast multiverse as your eclectic one. Welcome back to the channel. We're talking Wildstorm Wednesday. Who follows Jim Lee? This is a real problem, and the whole issue, this whole insight, this vein that I'm tapping now, started with Marvel Vision 17, covered by Brett Booth. And essentially, we're going to go through this, but this article in here sets it up because it asks the question very clear. What's it like to follow Jim Lee? And we have Brett Booth's answer. Now, sure, it's a PR. I'm happy to be, I'm happy to be in on the team or in the play, coach. Thank you for calling me up. But we know Brett Booth from Wildcats Zero, talent search winner. Wildcats Zero, vastly underrated as a entry effort, as an unknown coming into a major title, because Wildcats was a major title. You know, when this dropped, this came with the Wildcats trade paperback, came polybag, but this opened up a can of worms, a vein, a crack, a crevice to where who followed Jim Lee during some of these runs and why, and what does that say about Wildstorm's approach, Wildstorm's talent procurement, talent acquisition, talent nurturing. I think it says a lot. So we're going to hit the drawing table. We're going to do another deep dive into Wildstorm, a little bit of Wildstorm history, a little bit of Jim Lee history, a little bit of Brett Booth history. And guys, we do this. We fight for time to make these videos to bring some things to light. And I really believe a lot, like this is something good. This is gold. This is stuff to consider. Even when we go into Todd McFarlane's Amazing Spider-Man, not Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man. And then what happens after that? And after that, a lot of times what you will find is the superstar artist, the publisher slips on them, and they don't really make it up in the storyline. It's very interesting. It's almost like they give up on the title. Maybe that's a subject later down the road. If you want that video of what publishers do to major titles when a superstar artist leaves, let me know down below. But for right now, we're going to hit that drawing table, and we're going to just have a look at what happens after Jim Lee. AKAPAD here, let's go. There it is, AKAPADers. Now, before we proceed, remember, never trust another comic book commentator if they don't have a Crypt action figure on their desk. So here it is, Marvel Vision, the Marvel fan magazine. Fantastic Four artist Brett Booth, Amalgam, Scott Hanna, and more. If you're not familiar with Marvel Vision, this magazine went for about 30 issues. In the back, we have a order sheet. This is a catalog. This replaces Diamond Previews. At this point in comic book history, Marvel is acting as its own distributor through the purchase of Heroes World, that I believe was right across the bridge in New Jersey. Heroes World Distributors became a Marvel company, and Marvel said, we can go direct, we can go big, and we can make big projects. And this was the biggest thing that they had during this time, is Heroes Reborn. The best-selling Fantastic Four, Avengers, Iron Man, and Captain America issues. Now, and Fantastic Four and Iron Man, potentially, but we know for a fact that the highest-selling Avengers and Captain America came through Heroes Reborn. So I pulled this from a bin. It fascinated me as soon as I saw it. Number one, I really dig the coloring. I dig the purple. I dig the yellow. Great blending there. The Brett Booth, again, we try and track as much, track and document as much Brett Booth as possible because his evolution is flat out fantastic and jaw dropping. So we cracked this open, and yeah, I'm in the comic shop and I'm kind of reading this when I'm at the long boxes. We don't have too much. You know, what else have you worked on? I've done Wildcats 0, 2 issues of Stormwatch, Kindred miniseries, and Backlash. I'm writing Backlash. How'd you break in? Associates, Fine Arts, college. I got an associate's degree. I was planning to go back. So, I mean, it's a fluff piece, but we do get some nice Brett Booth black and whites. We get him with the Fantastic Car. We get a kind of weak Sue Storm, but again, the money is always in Ben Grimm to whoever draws Fantastic Four. We want to see how you draw Ben Grimm. So this is what stood out, and this is what led. How the heck do we follow Jim Lee, and why would you ever bake that into the dough of your release? Penciling the Fantastic Four is undoubtedly a fantastic opportunity, but what's your ultimate goal? I want to be more popular than Jim Lee, Lex, but I'm not sure that's really possible. It might come to my having to knock him off one of these days. Seriously though, I'm just going to try and get it right. It's a fluff answer, but the idea that he's joking about dethroning Jim Lee eventually, career-wise, he doesn't even get close to that. Artistically, I would say he's there with Jim Lee. Brett Booth can draw. I would probably put more money on Brett Booth drawing a sequential comic book story over Jim Lee at this point. But overall, no one knows who Brett Booth is. Overall, everyone knows who Jim Lee is. So it got me thinking, right? What happens with that thought? How do we follow Jim Lee? Well, let's just get into Wildcats right here. Wildcats 9. Wildcats 9, Jim Lee is winding down his Wildcats run. Outside of the initial Wildcats launch, Jim Lee never really was on the title. But we get to number 15 here. And we get Travis Charest. Shara. And this completely blows the industry out of the water. Travis, without a doubt, becomes the premier Wildcats artist. So much so, like, let's have a look at, but so much so, we get issue 21 over here. And 21 is really what I feel is his absolute benchmark. We have more of an introduction of Code Red, who I absolutely love. Mr. Majestic is folded into the team. And we get this like negative space by Travis Charest that Jim Lee never really had a handle of. He doesn't do complicated shots, meaning he doesn't move the camera around much. But what he shows us is like, you kind of want to say it's perfect. What he shows us is perfect. Oh, pin up by Joe Quesada. Joe Quesada always coming in hot. I love this era, Joe Quesada. So, and then to get into it, Brett Booth wins the Wildstorm Productions talent search, and through that, he gets to illustrate Wildcats 0, which is a over-the-top, amazing piece for an entry-level artist. I would put this toe-to-toe with even Travis Charest's first drawn book, Joe Madora's first drawn book, Chap Yap's first drawn book. Brett Booth, as entry-level, shatters the glass. But at the same time, he develops some drawing problems. I don't feel like he can rotate his figures enough. There's a couple things, you know, like a couple pieces of commentary. So when it comes to the book that we all know Jim Lee for, Uncanny X-Men, right? This is one of Jim Lee's most refined issues from Uncanny X-Men. You can kind of see a little bit of the studio work. It's very easy to tell that Jim Lee's working within the studio just based on some of the inconsistency with the faces, but this is some of Jim Lee's most packed. But it's a full issue. It's packed. But it works, it flows, and you can flip through it. Carl Osterwalder from Rob Liefeld's Bloodstrike. He's the one that did the layout and design for this. We're in the studio system here, believe it or not. So who follows Jim Lee on X-Men, on Uncanny X-Men? Well, we have Will Spartacio, who in a large effect could be a improvement based on your taste. I love Spartacio's hair at this point. I loved his effects. The storytelling style very close to Jim Lee. But, you know, while Wells is on this, Jim Lee's on, right? We know it. We all know the story. Jim Lee's on X-Men. Who follows Jim Lee on X-Men? Well, that's Art Taber. And then we have Punisher War Journal. I believe Butch Geist follows Jim Lee on that. So let's just get into what we're talking about in this article. This is really the idea. You launch what could be the highest selling Fantastic Four issue of all time. You're Jim Lee. And you introduce this idea of militarized Fantastic Four. This is what you did with Wildstorm. Militarized superheroes. And Jim Lee really delivers some career work. His Fantastic Four #1 and his X-Men Wildcats Silver Age. Maybe two of my favorite works. So we have Namor, right? This Captain America issue is just fantastic. But we get to Black Panther. Let's just go to Black Panther. Well, we don't have that issue here. Well, we got the end of it. So we get to Black Panther. We get to Doctor Doom. And we still get this Jim Lee with issue 6. And if you're like a monthly reader, look at that Galactus. You have to be excited to get issue 7. And then something happens. Heroes Reborn really, the wheels fall off the wagon. Just as a publishing title, we'll call it. Or like an imprint within Marvel. Some of these look very Brett Booth. This is Brett Booth right here, actually, people. This page is Brett Booth. These two pages are Brett Booth. You can easily tell by the faces. So you get 7. You introduce your backup singer, Brett Booth. You give him Wolverine. Now, Captain America around this time had Cable. And this is where the wheels fell off the wagon on an editorial point. Just seemed like Heroes Reborn almost like lost its direction between two separate houses, Extreme Studios and Wildstorm Productions. But we kind of get work that, you know, we're a little bit happy with, but we may not like the faces, we may not like the expressions. It's just not Jim Lee enough. It's not, and it's unfair to call Brett Booth a Jim Lee clone. So we get issue 7 flows into issue 8. Let's introduce the Inhumans. But you guys can probably already see it's impossible to follow Jim Lee. To follow Jim Lee as a talking point kind of shows you the failure of how Marvel was actually packaging their stuff at the time. So let's get all the way into the final issue here. The issue that wraps it all up is WW3, part 1 of 4. And Brett Booth is not even on the book right now. We have Mike Waringo, R.I.P. Waringo, beyond capable to draw anything, by the way, guys. But it's now we have this. Now Waringo, keep in mind, will have a spectacular Fantastic Four run with Mark Waid. But we kind of start with this. We start with this. This is what the people want. This is what the people want. And we end with this cartoony Mike Waringo, who's a genius in his own right, but he does not fit in this world. Like, he just doesn't. I'm trying to even find a good, like, spread page here, right? This is how it started. This is how it ended. And the revelation really is is that you can argue the only follow-up that Jim Lee ever had as an artist that's suitable, not even for Hush, is going to be Travis Charest with Wildcats 15, peaking at Wildcats 21, and his fellow studio mate, Wells Portacio, who here, I just flipping through this, the colors alone get me rock hard, people. The colors get me rock hard, not these bikini babes. Just food for thought. And just if we're going back to like a random dollar store or dollar book pickup, this did two things. This ignited my desire to really own all of the Marvel Vision books, because it is at a time you can kind of really argue where Marvel was its most ambitious as a publisher. I want to document, I want to know more, I want to do a complete retrospective on Marvel Vision, the Marvel Fan magazine. So expect more of that. But complete, again, just hanging around the comic shop, reading random things. It just inspired me, and I think it fits perfectly in Wildstorm Wednesday, guys. So thanks for hanging out.
Welcome back, AKAPAD. So a little bit of that observation. And look, people, it got me thinking. It got me thinking hardcore, to the point and to the idea that it seemed like for a stretch, DC and Marvel tried to keep up with any artist that popped or kind of hit the mainstream, was able to move books on their own. Eventually, they couldn't keep up with keeping an artist on the title and replacing an artist that had equal fire or equal attention. We see this a lot with Uncanny X-Men. I really say that after Joe Maduro on Uncanny X-Men, Marvel never really replaced him. They never really did. They never got that attention from an artist ever again. And I grew up in the era where if the art wasn't run by X-Men, the rest of the industry didn't have anything else to follow. X-Men set the art standards for a solid 30 years in comic books, and that's another reason why that title is always important. So what happened was we had this paradigm shift in the industry where Marvel and DC, let's just call it Marvel DC, eventually said, we're not going to chase these artists. We can keep a writer happy. We can keep a writer on a book for a long time, and the best way to keep a writer on a book for a long time is to do this drawn out, like this accordion like storytelling where it just keeps going and going and going, and the value for the single issues drop because we just don't have a lot going on, but it kept the interest of the people as long as the writing was there. And we kind of call this the talking head era of comic book, which is post-Image. So in the early 2000s, all of American comic books became talking heads for a reason. And then from that point, it became events. The publishers just said, we're going to focus on events. We're going to do like this tapestry type storytelling, and we're going to involve every single book all the time. Now, this completely leaves out any need for a superstar artist or a single artist to move a single book. It disrupted what the abilities of the artist were, what the expectations of an artist were in the American comic book marketplace. It's not a practice that is observed on that level. A lot of people say the publishers gave up on artists and they don't create, and everyone goes, well, Image. Well, not really, because Marvel and DC hired nearly every single artist outside of Todd McFarlane that left. Think about that. Image generation 1, 2, 3, whatever. They all went back to Marvel and DC for particular reasons, and that's because it's an industry, but it's not art driven. And I think this really shed the light on it, which is you cannot follow a superstar artist, but what you can follow is a writer. What you can follow is a event. And if we pump up those stocks, we have a chance just to maintain a constant level of curiosity and excitement from the readership. It's a big effing point, people. Wildstorm Wednesday. We got another one coming next week.